welcome to everybody who has joined us for our meeting about Meet DG NEAR, an event on the European Commission's perspective on Ukraine's recovery. And I'm very glad to see that by now we are almost 100 people. We are glad we have had more than 200 registrations for this event, and I trust that we will be more than 100 in a couple of minutes, but in order not to lose too much time, we are starting already now. I'm very happy to have this load of participants again from various sectors of German society, from private sector, from civil society, from academia and municipalities. My name is Peter Bonin. I work with the Secretariat for the Platform for Reconstruction of Ukraine. And I'm very happy to start our event within the framework of our German Platform for the Reconstruction of Ukraine. The platform is an initiative of the German federal government, and it brings together stakeholders based in Germany who are interested, but who are also, this is very important, active in reconstruction in Ukraine. What's our main objective? We want to contribute to make Germany's contribution to Ukraine's reconstruction more effective and sustainable. We want to do this through what we think is the most important, through more exchange, through information, and through building networks among relevant stakeholders. Our main activity, or one of our main activities, is having regular events to get insights into perspective of international stakeholders. And with this, we're very pleased to have our today's event. We've had invited Mrs. Anna Jarosz-Fries, who unfortunately, due to other urgent obligations, as most of the participants can guess, could not make it for today. But we are very happy that we have a substitute which is way not less valuable. And I warmly welcome Jelena Wischner-Malinowska. She's head of unit for interinstitutional coordination of relief and reconstruction, also at the Directorate General for European Neighborhood and Enlargement Negotiations, DG NEAR. Warm welcome to you, Jelena, to be with us today. Before we get into the topic and into the subject, let me share with you the classicals about some technical housekeeping. And this is already very well known by everybody living in this world of online events. Our event will be recorded, and by staying in the call, you all agree to the recording, and you also agree to that the recording will be shared on our website, where we will also share other materials from the session as well. How do we want to conduct this session? Of course, we are very keen to have an input. This input is prepared and will be done by Jelena, but mainly, as I said, this is about networking. So we will have, we hope to have enough time for a nice Q&A and discussion session afterwards. And since this platform and the spirit of this platform is so multifaceted, we are quite convinced that this is also, there will be also a benefit for our participants from the European Commission to take away some insights from our participants as well. We will have time for questions and comments after the input. How do we want to discuss? Please post your questions in the chat and we will take them up then, and but also we will give you the word for, of course, for direct intervention. Now coming to our subject, European Commission, of course, being a key stakeholder and supporter of Ukraine's recovery, short-term supporting immediate needs, plus mid-term, long-term helping in recovery, reconstruction, and modernization efforts. We're curious to hear about the guiding path European Commission and European Union is conducting and is showing here. And of course, everybody sees and reads about the new mechanisms we have. We have the Ukraine facility aiming at providing a predictable financial support for Ukraine in order to lay preconditions for reforms and through the Ukraine plan. And of course, we're very keen on learning more about the European Commission's perspectives on that. And without further ado, I will pass the word to Jelena Wiśna-Malinowska. Jelena, happy to have you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be with you here around a virtual discussion table, and thank you very much to the German Platform for the Reconstruction of Ukraine. I would like also to apologize that my director is not here, but she has a very good excuse for that. She is, as we speak, she is in Kyiv accompanying the president of the European Commission. I am relatively new in my job, but this may be also an advantage because it means I look at the issues that are presented to me in a way as how the newcomer would look at those. So I will try to simplify to the extent possible, and hopefully we will have a good conversation. Peter, I dare to say or to add to your introduction that it's important not only to show that our reconstruction and relief efforts are effective and sustainable, but they should be also visible and well known. So there is really a reassurance for the public that the money is well spent and goes where it needs to go. So what is the strategy of the European Commission for the recovery of Ukraine in light of Ukraine's accession to the Union? Well, first of all, if we consider the massive needs that are out there and financial gaps for Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction, it is important to see how much the Ukraine facility as a very dynamic, flexible, but also innovative instrument, how does it look like? Because it does combine what we call the macrofinancial assistance, so the support to the budget of Ukraine, but it also does contain the guarantees and grants, and very importantly, it does contain the reforms that we ask Ukraine to undertake so that Ukraine can start its path towards the Union membership. Now, the Ukraine facility is divided in three pillars that are quite logically actually addressing different objectives. First of all, what we call the pillar one, or the Ukraine plan pillar, this is where we try to support the urgent financial needs of the state, and to a narrower extent, support the investments for Ukraine. And this is where Ukraine essentially has to adopt reforms. These reforms are being checked on a quarterly calendar. And once these reforms, these laws are being passed, Ukraine is submitting its payment request that is then being assessed by the Commission, and a decision for the Council decision is being proposed. Just to explain you here, we are working also in a very tight timelines because as soon as we receive the payment request, we have just a couple of weeks to assess it, to propose the council decision, and council has essentially 3 weeks to approve it. And as soon as there is a positive assessment of the reforms, the money can flow to the budget of Ukraine that is then used for all the dire needs that are out there. And those are, of course, providing uninterrupted public services, so salaries to the administration, the social benefits, school, hospitals, meals for pupils, etc. For the so the investment part is mostly what we call the pillar 2. And there we have really a massive amount of money, if I may say it, and where we want to build, let's say, the economy in the midterm to the longer term, that would be indeed sustainable, and where the companies would be able to establish itself, or when they are already in Ukraine, to scale up or to grow. And this is the part with we very much engage with the Ukrainian private sector. And there is what we call the pillar 3, where we essentially try to provide the technical assistance to the government so that they get support for implementation of the European legislation, which you can imagine in the area of judicial or anti-corruption. This does require establishing certain practices, putting in place certain structures, and so on. And of course, this does include support to civil society. We know that civil society in Ukraine has been quite active prior to the aggression and remains very active. And so also out of this pillar, we cover interest rate for subsidies. And of course, the facility overall is guided by the, let's say, priorities of the Ukraine plan. Just to visualize it, as you can imagine, in view of the next winter, energy systems that have been massively targeted in recent attacks are the ones probably that are the most important. Now, what is the state of play of our overall support? It's, I would say, quite massive, and this is a figure you should recall as a figure of support by the Union and its member states. So the total economic, humanitarian, and military support to Ukraine amounts to over 118 billion. Only under the facility, we have so far provided some 12 billion, and by the end of this year should be around 16 billion. So the next payment request should come by the end of September. It will be assessed, and this payment would be worth of 4 billion. Under the Ukraine investment framework, we have signed what we call the contributions in guarantees and grants. We work here with the international financial institutions. These are our, let's say, partners in this endeavor, and they do implement together with us this investment framework. International financial institutions are very, knowledgeable, very experienced. They do act in very difficult geographies. So, of course, they are an important partner for us here. At the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin, we signed what we call the top-ups to the existing agreements, the 1.4 billion, where we hope they will provide for leverage and mobilize up to 6 billion euro. Here, maybe just for you to know, and I am sure that this crowd that is now listening includes and the private companies and the municipalities, but there are also the Ukraine state-owned enterprises that can benefit. Of course, the first priority goes to repairing, rehabilitating infrastructure. As of day one of the attacks, as of 24th of February, February, I think Ukraine is in a sort of reconstruction, permanent reconstruction endeavor, and this is where we have to support the most important infrastructure, the critical infrastructure. Then, of course, is the transport, municipal sectors. Just to visualize for you, it's typically the water, sewage, the waste management. It is also about access to finance for SMEs. This is not a problem that is specific to Ukraine. We see it also in the Union member states, but due to the war conditions, to the fact that the risks are there, and there is, of course, some risk aversity with the financial system, it is important that we lower the risk for the SMEs. And of course, as you may imagine, in the frontline regions, there is much less appetite or much more risks up there for establishing the business. But in order to have there some social fabric, human capital, job opportunities, of course, the business needs to be there. Next slide, please. So the Ukraine investment framework, and very importantly, you mentioned sustainable. I mean, my past job over the almost 2 decades in the Commission has been in sustainability, in energy, mobility, environment policies. So it is very important that the Ukraine investment framework actually somehow earmarks the funds. We need to show that at least 20% go to the areas of climate change mitigation, the environmental protection, biodiversity conservation, or the green transition. We are due to do no significant harm for the major investments to Ukraine. There's also 25% of the guarantee is invested in Ukraine sovereign entities and non-commercial sub-sovereign entities, and at least 15% needs to go for startups and SMEs, essentially really to build this economy of the future. Next slide. So this is just to summarize the pillar 2, where there are investments. If you want a shortcut, labeling, pillar 1 is mostly about reforms. Pillar 2 is mainly about the investments. These are the amounts. The slides will be shared with the participants, so you can see the amounts here, and also the implementation by what we call the pillar assessed entities, so the eligible financial institutions and the international financial institution. Now, in terms of the governance, because I think it is very important to build the trust in the system. There has been a lot of talk at the beginning about corruption and the environment in which Ukraine is. So it is very important to show that our investments are being channeled to Ukraine in a very transparent fashion. So what we do is, of course, the technical assessment is always carried out by the Commission, and there is the so-called steering board that does approve the operations and does safeguard the convergence with the sectors of the plan. Coincidentally, we have the second steering board happening today. The board is the place where the Commission and the member states sit, and they approve with the other partners, like the Parliament of Ukraine or the European Parliament being the observers. So, if you wish, controllers if everything goes well. So at the first meeting, the board in April, they approved a couple of, can you just go back to the slide? Approved a couple of very important decisions, like the strategic orientations, like the rules of procedures, and like the top-ups of existing guarantee agreement. Mostly the first one is maybe of most interest for this crowd, because this is really formulating, what are the sectors that we want to invest into. Next slide, please. There we will show you this is a very sort of orderly planned process always. So as soon as we get a green light today from the steering board, we can launch the new calls of the Ukraine investment framework. And there is an upcoming conference where, of course, we do expect the society, the companies, and also the financiers to meet. But I'll talk about it a bit later. Next slide. So the first round, and this is, I'm sorry, I hope there are some finance people in the crowd, because this gets a little bit techy at this point. So, but I think it's still of general interest. So whom do we, support through these upcoming calls? Because many of you could say, okay, this will be mostly for the private sector. Eh ben, no, it's also, these upcoming calls are to cover also the public sector. So all operations for public investments. And this is because, as I said, the pillar one is mostly for reforms, it's budget support, and that's where Ukraine has quite a margin of maneuver how this money is channeled. Here it is really about creating an investment environment. Private sector direct, these are direct agreements with private or commercial sub-sovereign. So sub-sovereign means not national, but subnational entities. And quasi-equity or equity via intermediation. But that's as I say, already very techy language for this purpose. Next slide, please. So what are the priorities? I mean, in the first round, of course, I mean, energy is on everybody's mind. Maybe you have yesterday followed, some of you, the press conference at the premises of the International Energy Agency, also with the president. We know the huge damage that was incurred by the energy system in Ukraine. So now the first priority is really mostly on repairs, to put back some capacity, something what we call, winterization, so that, there is a preparedness for what is coming up. So there is all the coordination going on to help that, but also investments. And I have seen in a chat a message passing with high social impact, because we know that in terms of the reconstruction, it will not be about only financial flows. It will be most importantly about the human capital. Will we see Ukrainians going back? Will we see the social fabric being rebuilt? We have seen this in Europe already, in the Balkans, for instance. After the Balkans War, we see how many decades it takes to rebuild a community. So there are many of these considerations to support the vulnerable groups, such as veterans, the internally displaced people, and participate in demining of the territory. Agriculture sector, Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world. It has a very consequential agriculture sector. So there are calls and priorities trying to help Ukraine to actually move up the value chain from the raw crops only to products, techniques, practices. There are also operations in telecoms. You may have heard that a couple of days ago there was a major transaction that has been facilitated by IFC and European Commission for acquisition in the telecoms sector. And of course, we are looking at the impact on climate and environment. We see that at least in the energy sector for the future, having a decentralized system is even more secure than not having it. And of course, all these public projects should be aligned with the Ukraine plan. That becomes almost a leitmotif of my presentation. Next slide, please. The civil society participation. Very, very important, and let's say assured that we are calling on it. We are asking for it anytime we discuss with Ukraine authorities to have civil society involved in the planning, in the project preparation, in the different phases. So at least 52 grants have been channeled. It's mostly under the Pillar 3 to allow the civil society in this very dire situation of essentially survival to play its role. There is, from what we see, very active engagement of the German civil society in human capital, in launching the Skills Alliance with Ukraine Alliance for a gender responsive and inclusive recovery, and so on. Next slide, please. Yes, and finally, we come to the enlargement process, because this is one of the, let's say, levers from the Union, how we can even more press or pressurize for reforms efforts in Ukraine. And you know that Ukraine was very fast after the invasion to present its application for the accession into the European Union, and those have been actually opened in the first intergovernmental conference in June 2024. What happens now is essentially a very technical but very important work that is called so-called screening. So what happens is that we open different chapters and we present the legislation, we screen the legislation that is out there, and we expect Ukraine to agree to the scope of this. Sometimes mistakenly we talk about enlargement negotiations. There is no something like negotiation. This is purely about alignment to the union legislation. So it is mostly about the timetables and about negotiating by when the candidate country is able to do so. So we had already the first screening on public procurement. As you know, public procurement is a sine qua non. You cannot have growth, you cannot have fair competition, you cannot have normal economy. And this week we had the so-called chapter 23, which is again on some topics that are very dear to the union, like the rule of law, the fundamental and human rights. And we were very pleased to see how seriously this has been taken. The meetings were very constructive, and the Ukraine side, of course, has been very well prepared. What expect next? In the coming weeks, we should issue the enlargement report that covers, of course, not only Ukraine, but also the other candidate countries. And this shows you, how much Ukraine has progressed on the recommendations from the last year. So it's giving a sort of movie, but also a snapshot, a photo picture where Ukraine is now with some of the very important recommendations. And we hope, again, the enlargement report normally triggers a conversation around, where a candidate country is. So there has been, I can say, there is a significant progress that has been achieved. And the next enlargement report is coming. Next slide, please. And I think I'm almost at the end, so it will allow me to maybe come back to all the questions you have placed in the meantime. If you want more information, we have different links where you can, really dig deeper or dive deeper on what we are doing. I think we are quite active also on social media to showcase what is happening. And that's it from my side for the time being, before I go to the chat and I discover the long list of questions you have placed in the meantime.
Thank you, Elena. And I have the feeling that the list is about to grow. I propose, thank you very much, first of all, for this input. I don't think you have to excuse for being very technical, because I think this is at least what's of great importance also for those who are participating here as well. Let's start with one thing, or with one field of questions. As you have learned from us, this on the platform, a lot of very different actors come together from different fields. So we also have, of course, interests from different sectors. I would like to invite the two representatives, one from which is Michael Hörig, asking for education, and Moritz Ruh on health. If the two of you could briefly, also to learn who's talking to us on this year, if you could reiterate your questions. These are from sectoral perspective, as far as can say here. Michael Hörig, please.
Yes, thank you very much. So my name is Michael Hörig. I'm the director of the DAD, the German Academic Exchange Service office in Brussels. We cater, of course, for higher education cooperation. And one of the things that strike me in the Ukraine facility and the narrative that is being proposed is that the importance of the economy of the future is basically always sidelining a little bit the importance of the higher education and research sector for this purpose. Now, I'm well aware that the consequences and the immediate priorities, of course, are with reconstruction of energy and so on. But if you look at the midterm perspective, I think a dedicated focus to higher education and research capacity in the country, which is something different than the current EU programs in education, would be very important. So I would like to ask this particular question: how would maybe in the midterm the Ukraine facility support a strong higher education and research sector in Ukraine? Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
And maybe Moritz Ruh might want to add immediately. So we have two sectoral perspectives here, if that's fine for you as well, Elena. I would like to ask Moritz Ruh to reiterate his.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Moritz Ruh from the German Federal Ministry of Health. I work in the coordination unit for Ukraine. And basically, I have the same question just for the health sector. What is planned there, and how you're planning to invest in that sector?
Elena, over to you.
Thank you very much. Very pertinent questions. First of all, let me say that when we present a certain narrative, a certain story, it doesn't exclude all what has been mentioned. What we do realize, and with the Ukrainian refugees in the Union, is how talented they are in the STEM sectors, and how many pupils who, when joining the schools and when being put in a certain class, have often capacities in mathematics or science that is higher than the age group with which they are. I have heard this from Slovakia, from Czechia. I see it here in Belgium. I'm hosting a family myself. So it's really interesting to see that the Ukraine education system is actually already relatively well placed to support the STEM sectors. The second point, and coming from Central Europe, being half Czech, half Slovak, I do remember already in the past, there have been always very strong research capacities in these countries, and these, of course, it shrank in the transition of the 90s, but a lot of that does indeed, work or is part of value chains or supports some of the SMEs. This is also something what we hear as message from those companies that stayed in Ukraine. So just to reassure you that this is really important for us. Now, is the facility obstructing, financing into these sectors? Definitely not. For instance, already under Pillar 1, the investments that are there, the 6 billion, can be going into the priorities of the Ukraine plan. That can be the research capacities or education. I mean, it is really up to the Ukraine budget authority to decide where these funds go. Now, you should know that facility is not the only financing pot in Ukraine. Ukraine has become actually entered at least 14 programs, I think, in Ukraine, including Horizon Europe, including Erasmus, including the health programs. So I believe the facility will work in synergies with this type of programs. So there is certainly, something on the side of Ukraine also to identify those sectors. Health sector, typically hospitals, schools. This is something that is being already reconstructed under the Pillar 1. Some of the investments do go there. I don't know whether this is a satisfactory reply, but that's the one that I can give you at this stage, and happy to elaborate more if we have more elements to submit to you, for instance, in writing.
Thank you, Elena, on that one. I take the liberty of addressing attention to the comment from Dominik Kalweit, who added a hint in the context of support to displaced researchers, mainly in the context of education. We're still here in that subject, but let us switch to another headline, looking at 2 points having been made in context of civil society organizations, role of civil society. Would like to invite Irene Lucius to come a bit more into the talk about representation of civil society at the UIF board, and then also Wilhelm Struben, who also is coming in with a comment on civil society. Irene Lucius, please.
Thank you very much to give me the floor. I'm representing WWF. We also have an office in Ukraine, but we're also closely working together with a range of other green NGOs based in Germany, in Ukraine, but also in other countries. And just yesterday, we had a coordination call and were really puzzled about how Pillar 2 works. And I found it extremely enlightening the way you have explained it. And maybe you could also have a similar presentation for our civil society forum. But my question is about civil society participation in Pillar 2. I mean, you mentioned that the European Parliament, the Ukrainian Parliament have observer positions in the board. Wouldn't it be also possible to give such a role to civil society organizations? It's clear it cannot be many seats, but we believe that would be extremely helpful for transparency, but also to bring in our point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As always, this is a very relevant question. Let me say the following. The steering board really looks at financial operations, and we do communicate on those that are being, the calls will be launched, etc. So for me, to be very frank with you, I really don't see the added value of having, even I wouldn't know who from the civil society should sit there to bring value or to tilt the process somewhere else, because this is a process that really looks that is very scripted in the sense of rules, but that is also very technical. Nevertheless, there is a process now to involve civil society, Ukraine civil society and other civil society a little bit more to the work of the Ukraine donor platform. And for me, this is a much more important, let's say, place for civil society than the one in the steering board. This is where, you know, the partners from UK, US, Japan, Union, they do coordinate on many topics, and we're trying to actually make sure that the channeling of the money goes where it needs to go. We have seen in the development cooperation in the past that you had sometimes a complete fragmentation of the donor community to one country, and there it really even impacts the administrative capacity of that country, the absorption capacity, etc. So at the end, your aid is almost a Trojan horse or a toxic gift instead of being very helpful. And in this Ukraine platform actually will in the future interact much more with the civil society. It will go beyond in Ukraine the established umbrella rise of civil society towards other institutions representing very different topics, like the gender issues, like the I don't know, the issues for the veterans, you know, sustainability issues, typically the environmental protection, because we see a lot of environmental harm being now done in Europe, and so on and so forth. So I personally don't see it even useful for civil society for the steering board meetings, but the civil society will have a place for the wider, and I would say even more strategic discussions and interactions that do happen under the Ukraine donor platform.
Thank you, Elena. And we have a growing number of comments and questions. It makes it a bit ambitious to select the right ones in order to have a maximum benefit from the time we have. But I had mentioned Wilhelm Struben earlier also to come in with his point, and then I would see whether we still have time to pick up 2 more interventions, but I would like to ask Wilhelm Struben to reiterate his comment on civil society and corruption, please.
Thank you very much. I'm with the Partnership for Transparency Europe, PTF Europe, and which is registered in München, and maybe an international CSO, but at the same time being registered in München. It is it's also German. Since a couple of years we are involved in strengthening in programs to strengthen local civil society organizations in Ukraine, and we started in Odessa and got some support, financial support from the Czech government. And it's all aimed at a monitoring, humanitarian, and more and more so also reconstruction activities. The huge amounts of funding which are going in that direction, where we are convinced, and the evidence is there, that local civil societies can and should play a major role. So the intention is to use the findings of these earlier programs to spread this out all over the country. But what we have noticed is that so far there is a lot of international attention being paid to the major national CSOs in Ukraine, but there is relatively little attention being paid to those at the local level, where after all they have a much better feeling of what is needed at the local level. They have a much better contacts with the local populations, and this is unfortunately what I also missed in the presentation which you just got. Sure, there is a lot of you mentioned very explicitly the importance of corruption. I think there's no doubt about it. But when it came to the little section on support for civil society activities, you did not mention anything about corruption, and I wonder why this is not getting more attention. Anyhow, that's the pretty crucial question which I wanted to ask you.
Thank you very much, Willem Strube. If you allow me, just in order to, with regard to time, and since Willem Strube, next to the corruption and transparency issue, mentioned the local level, if this is okay for you, Elena, I would like to invite also Stefanie Schiffer, adding to this point with her intervention on the 20% of Pillar 1 that are being reserved to municipalities. Stefanie Schiffer, would you like to come in here as well?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution. The question is indeed also about the local level. It is a small part. It's just 1 billion euro out of a 50 billion in total, which is reserved as non-repayable grants for the subnational level for the municipalities. This is important seeds money. It's not so much. 4 years, it's 250 million euro for 1,400 municipalities, but it's important money for not only for reconstruction, but also for strengthening local self-government. So our question is, how far are the negotiations between DG NEAR and the ministries for finance, economy, and reconstruction and regional developments? It's de facto 3 ministries, which makes things not easier. How is negotiations progressing? And what can DG NEAR do to guarantee the right for participation of the municipalities themselves in that process? This is enshrined also in the Ukraine facility and in the Ukraine plan. My question, what can DG NEAR do for preserving in negotiations with the ministries the co-saying and the participation of the municipalities themselves? Thank you.
Elena, over to you. I hope it's not, I make life not too difficult for you by combining different topics. Let's see.
Actually, they can be combined very nicely. Let me put it very clear to everyone on this call that the Commission has always formulated and encouraged Ukraine to involve the local level and civil society. The reform, the decentralization reform that has happened in Ukraine is actually the fruit of our continuous effort and pressure over Ukraine. And it did happen. And this, I mean, you could see it also in the first days of the war, where the world has been discovering the different cities of Ukraine, how regionally equally distributed or strong the cities were. So you didn't have the system which we see in many member states, where you have the capital as a hub, as an engine, and you have, let's say, a more sort of rural areas. You have seen many very strong and I would say quite aptly and efficiently led cities. And we are very proud of this achievement for decentralization, and we would like that these achievements are being preserved and they are not, you know, there is no sort of backsliding on that. I do apologize. I could have mentioned the civil society in Ukraine is very active. So is the civil society in support of Ukraine. There are so many activities happening that, I mean, just by listing them, we could be here much, much, much longer. For the 20% that you mentioned under the Pillar 1, which constitute indeed an obligation towards Ukraine to channel 20% of funds, so it's something like 1 billion. So per year it's about 200 million. We are discussing with the relevant ministries the permanent mechanism that will allow us, the permanent mechanism that has been stipulated in the public investment management plan, that was one of the steps that have been already adopted. So this is in discussion, and indeed we wish to have these funds, of course, going to the municipalities, but the municipalities having the possibility to use them for the areas they need, for maybe financing the local strategies, local development strategies. This may not be fully easy because many of these local development strategies are not real investment strategies. So often, and we see it, frankly, this is not Ukraine specific problem. We see it also in European Union cities. You often don't have a very holistic view on a development. You know, you develop, I don't know, rail tracks, then you think of an alley of trees that could be there, then maybe of cycling path, and you use very different funds and you have very different strategies on which this is based. But rest assured that this is really subject of discussions, and we're here to more or less defend the success of the decentralization. This is really something that was very dear to this institution, and we would certainly not like to see, any backsliding on that.
Thank you very much, Elena, on this one as well. We have time for to take one last question to the stage, and since private sector is also an important part of our platform activists, I would like to ask Olena to come in with her question on financing of private sector, please. If Olena is not with us or not able to talk, maybe Elena, you want to look into this directly, and we have another private sector related issue more on social enterprises. That would be Bogdan Androshuk. Maybe Bogdan, you might want to give us some more words on your point.
Thank you very much. My name is Bogdan Androshuk. I represent the Ukrainian Social Venture Fund. The fund supports the social entrepreneurial sector in Ukraine. And since the second Russian attack on Ukraine, we have been observing the situation that a lot of social enterprises, social startups, and impact-oriented businesses try to address humanitarian and social issues in Ukraine, and they play a crucial role within the recovery process in Ukraine. That's why my question, whether you have in the framework of DG NERA program, a special, I do not know, program or a special pillar for the social economy, or for all those players that I mentioned. Thank you.
It is my understanding that the facility also supports social services, or what you would call social economy. But I guess I have Jeanne, my colleague, on the call, I'll ask her to note down this question, and we may get back to you, Peter, so that you can give this answer to. I cannot. There are so many programs in DG NEAR. Of course, for Ukraine we have the facility, and then there are different flagships or technical assistance that is being implemented by the delegation, the Commission delegation in Kiev. So we would have to inquire.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. And it's only 2 minutes left for our session. I would like to go towards ending this session by asking you one last question, Elena. Just I would be curious to hear a bit about how was this round for you? How did the questions feel? Have there been surprising parts, or is this something you have experienced in other dialogues as well? How was it for you before we find an end here?
Well, thank you very much for this dialogue. It's my first dialogue on Ukraine. I started working in DG NEAR as of 1st of August. So I really feel like going after a little mini hearing, a mini grilling in this Q&A. And really, I'm very grateful for that because it does deepen a little bit my understanding of what are the major issues. Some of them were more predictable. I think the 20% is something that we hear. The 20% for municipal is something that is very much in the discourse. And also, one wants to have as much finance as possible by the current funding. At the same time, the situation on the ground, as you many know, is very dire. So it's really a question of prioritization in very exceptional circumstances than many of us didn't experience in any other country. So there it's all question, what comes first and what are the priorities. But so far, very good to have my primer on Ukraine in the discussion, and hopefully we will continue in these exchanges in the future.
Great, thank you very much. And I can share that this is a little bit also being in a time of dire spirit in the difficult times where Ukraine is in, having a feeling of a primer and having the feeling of things that are getting started, which is also relevant to the EU facility and the way which is ahead. Also gives some hope, I would say, and this is a good perspective, I would say. I would want to thank you again very much, Elena, and also all the participants for their active contribution. And before ending, I want to share with you a couple of other quick points. First of all, we have some events upcoming, which we want to make a little ad here. You can see the events here at the on the screen. We also have and would like you to participate in our little evaluation for all participants as a classic. And please don't be shy. It's a very quick one. We would be pleased if you could fill this in. And above all, we are looking forward to staying in touch. Things are just getting started. This is what it feels like. And please feel free to join us on the different platforms and levels where we are active. If you're interested, write us an email to the different email addresses we have here. And above all, if you like, join us on the LinkedIn group for participants. Join us there, and you find us here as well. This is where also dialogue can continue about all what we have here. A warm thank you to everybody. A warm thank you to Elena, and I wish everybody a nice and good way into the weekend, hopefully. Thanks again. Cheers. Bye-bye.